Let's call the meeting of the Citizen Advisory Committee to order for Wednesday, March 12th, and turn it over to our acting Nolani for roll.
Chair Sue Lester,
Here.
Vice Chair Michael Toe,
Here.
Jeff Arbor,
Here.
Cindy Brenneman,
Here.
Xerxes Kalilo,
Here.
Rosemary Chora,
Here.
and Paul Lancaster.
Here.
Very much.
I'd like to open for public comment if we have anybody out in space for public comment. Seeing nobody, we'll go ahead and close public comment and move to the first item, which is to approve the Citizen Advisory Committee meeting minutes for January 8th, 2025. Hopefully everybody had a chance to read them. Do I have a motion? Okay, second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none. Perfect. Moving right along. Item 2, we have receive and file the 2025 Christmas tree collection program. I imagine somebody's going to go over that.
Chris Pareto will be giving this report.
Excellent. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Committee. First, I do want to recognize our solid waste intern, Stephanie Tsai. She assembled the staff report. She couldn't be here this evening to present, but I did want to recognize her for compiling the report and then just the great work that she's been doing in the solid waste department. So for the second year, CRNR did start collecting Christmas trees the day after New Year's Day, with the program scheduled to run for 2 weeks through January 16th. CRNR did extend the dedicated collection truck by 2 days through January 18th. In total, there were 5,384 trees collected, totaling 25.8 tons. The staff report does include charts so you can see how this compares to collections for previous years. CRNR does believe that the tonnage is down this year in part because more people are putting trees into their organics cart rather than setting them out next to their carts. And this seems to be supported by the increase in tonnage that we saw for this January versus last January. Complaints for missed trees did increase this year quite significantly. We had 34 complaints last year compared to 98 this year. 48 of those complaints were for more than one home or more than one street. CRNR did schedule to return and collect those missed trees the following business day. We did receive 9 reports that rescheduled collections were not completed as scheduled. Given the high incidence of complaints that we did see this year, staff is recommending that we hire a third party to supplement collection for next year. And then the district would seek reimbursement from CRNR for the cost of that third party hauler. We did utilize a service such as this in 2023. The district currently pays an organics recycling rate of $81.66 per ton for the Christmas trees to be recycled at CRNR's AD facility in Paris, with 25.8 tons collected. The total cost for the program this year was $2,172.10, which is funded by the organics disposal cost budget. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Anybody have any questions?
I've seen Christmas trees that have been dumped on the streets even past this thing. And so what happens to that? Is that is that burden put on the city?
It depends. If somebody that's one of our customers puts it out, we can schedule a large item pickup for it if they've missed that window. If it's illegally dumped in the public right of way, then yes, that would fall to the city for collection.
I've seen them illegally dumped on just the public sidewalks.
If it's
outside the normal. And so, yeah, I'm just curious.
I saw quite a few of those this year too. And I think it was people who left their Christmas trees up too long. And then instead of, trying to put it in their organics recycling, they literally chucked it on a part of a street where like there's no fronts of houses or whatever, and I reported it to the city of Costa Mesa and they came and picked it up. But I did notice that too. I think, because we had the bigger trash
The bigger
bins.
parts, right?
I definitely think people were better about trying to put it in their container. If they had one big enough. And
Right.
could, get it in there, so that was good.
I think there were more residents concerned with the winds and the fires that were ongoing at that time, and I think they were avoiding putting them out and may have been using the cart for that reason as well.
So does the district decide, like, if you guys think that we should use a third-party hauler next year? CRNR has no say over it, you just say you didn't do a good enough job and we want it and you want us, we want you to reimburse it, and they do, or is it?
It's in the contract, so
Okay.
it was added to the 2023 amendment that we have that option to hire a third party and then to bill CRNR for that service.
Excellent.
And the third party, are they used as the primary hauler or
Would still-
supplemental?
Exactly,
hauler?
they would supplement. If we're seeing a lot of complaints or if we're reporting misses that aren't being addressed quickly enough, we would report those to the.
And the third party is only paid based on the
On
tonnage?
trees collected. Mhm.
Okay.
I believe last time we used them, it was on tree rather than tonnage.
Okay.
Rosemary?
If you're going to get a third-party hauler to collect the trees, could you also include or consider including the cost to either put an RFP out or to get that contract in place into the cost that's being billed back to CRNR?
I'd have to look at how the contract is worded. I don't know if it allows for that, but I can definitely take a look.
Thank you.
That's a great question. Oh, I love that about you. Anyone else?
Are there any other questions?
Cindy?
So we did, I think I know what streets the increased in calls were, because we saw a lot of, trees in in front of the trash cans or next to the trash cans that did not get picked up with the regular trash. So, I think the idea of doing the third party, having a third party, vendor come in and do that is a great idea, because there were multiple calls. I know there were multiple calls and things weren't picked up, so. It looked pretty bad for a while, but I also think there's a decrease. People don't put up Christmas trees like they used to anymore, and they don't, put them out. Like you said, we've got these bigger cans, so they just dump them in the can, hopefully.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Yes.
May I?
Oh, absolutely. Please.
During our discussion with the board and CRNR, I'd made the suggestion, a lot of people who leave their trees out that don't get picked up, there's generally a reason they're not picked up. They leave the stand on it, or they might wrap it, or they might have one of the things that negate them from getting it picked up. And I had made the suggestion that, when they come by, instead of just leaving the tree, when the CRNR comes through to get the tree and it's in violation of what can be picked up, put a tag on it. And I have gotten a commitment from CRNR that they're gonna do that next year, so that people know. I mean, some of these trees you guys see that are sitting by themselves, they probably have those little wooden or metal or those things at the bottom, a lot of them do. Or they might be the fake snow on them.
Yeah, the flocked ones, I know.
Yeah,
those don't.
so hopefully that'll at least educate folks a little bit as to why their tree didn't get picked up.
Great idea.
So why can't we be proactive? We're very good at communicating through our newsletter and information. Why can't we be proactive and let people know, if you're gonna put your tree out for pickup, here's the guidelines.
I think
That is-
you do
Yeah,
that.
that is part
Yeah,
of our
I think they
They just
do
don't read it or
include
listen.
that.
Yeah.
It's just people.
All the trees that were left behind in my neighborhood, they were completely stripped of any decorations and they did not have a stand. There was no reason for them not to be picked up. But as I was walking through the neighborhood, tree after tree after tree, they just did not pick it up. So it wasn't on the customer side, it was on the hauler side.
But I think that notice does then help differentiate, who they see as not complying, and if they, deceptively put one on there when it's like, hey, you should have picked it up, then that's big red flag for this district to CRNR.
You know, part of the being proactive, and I totally agree, Cindy. I had made this wild idea, which I tend to do at times, about let's go, where do 85% of the people get their Christmas trees? Home Depot.
Oh, Home Depot.
So we may be able to go to Home Depot and say, when you sell a tree and they say they live in Costa Mesa, give them the slip of paper that tells them if they want it picked up. I mean, CRNR should be able to do that really simply, I think.
I don't know if you recall, our only concern with that was if it's a Costa Mesa resident, but not a CMSD customer. We want to make sure those
Right.
customers aren't putting trees out with the expectation that they're going to be removed and then they're not.
There are definitely some things that need to be worked out, but
Great idea.
everybody just should go buy a fake tree. That's all.
Problem solved, right?
Oh,
Were there any other questions?
Anything else? Anybody?
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3 is review AB 2257 optional process for updating water and wastewater rate setting procedures. Scott?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a special treat for you tonight because our guest speaker is our district counsel, Alan Burns. He is going to be giving you a presentation about a new law that was passed that we believe could be beneficial to the district when it comes to setting wastewater rates. So I'm going to turn it over to Alan. Alan, the floor is yours.
Great. Hi, Alan.
Hi, that's Chair Sue Lester, is it?
It is.
Good evening, Scott, and members of the Citizens Advisory Committee. I'm Alan Burns. I'm District Counsel with the firm of Harper and Burns. And thank you for letting me present on optional procedures for Prop 218 compliance. So before we begin on what the law fixes, let's talk about what Prop 218 is and just review. I know you know it, but Prop 218 was passed by the voters in 1996 and became part of the California Constitution. That's Article 13D. The existing substantive requirements for imposing a fee under Prop 218 is all property-related fees must meet certain tests, or they'll be considered an invalid tax. This applies to sewer and trash collection fees for the district, many other fees for other entities. So the tests include that the revenues derived from the fees do not exceed the cost of providing the service, that the fees are only used for those services. Most importantly, that the amount of the fee shall not exceed the proportional cost of the service attributable to the parcel. And then the fee must not be imposed unless a service is available, and the fee may not be used for general government services, but only for services that are related to property. So those are the existing substantive provisions which talk about what facts you have to be able to collect the fee lawfully. But Prop 218 also added procedural requirements. And the procedural requirements require that an agency must follow those in adopting or increasing a property-related fee under the existing law. And that includes holding a hearing and sending a 45-day postcard notice of the hearing to the owner of each affected parcel. In addition, the notice of the hearing is published in the newspaper. The notice must specify the amount of the fee, the basis of the calculation, the reason of the fee. At the hearing, the agency is required to consider all protests against the fee. If the protests against the fee constitute a majority of those owners of the parcels, the agency may not impose the fee. Otherwise, the board may either impose the fee or not impose the fee. In the district's case, a report is prepared for the property tax roll. It's sent to the tax collector assessor, and the fees are collected with property taxes. So I have to give you a little detour before we get to the substance of the reason why we're here today. And that's a little dissertation on the exhaustion of administrative remedies doctrine. In one recent case, is what was the catalyst for AB 2257, and that's the Plantier versus Ramona Municipal Water District. And in that case, the property owner was given notice of an increase in his fees, but he did not protest the increase. He believed it was only an incremental increase in the percentage of the fee. So he thought he wasn't going to bother challenging that because he didn't necessarily disagree that the increase was reasonable. After the hearing, he later found out, and they went forward with the protest hearing, and only, as is typical, only 15 people protested. But then he later found out that it was more than that. They actually changed the way they calculated the fee, and they based it on what we know as EDUs, or equivalent dwelling units. And an equivalent dwelling unit is basically a residential home. And every property use in the district was assigned components of EDUs to equate to what their use would be. And for his commercial property, he was given a multiple of what an EDU would be. And he believed that violated the proportionality requirement of Proposition 218. The trial court agreed with him, certified a class action for all customers in a similar situation to challenge the district at that time, and they were ready to go. The district defended by asserting that Plantier failed to exhaust his administrative remedies. And that means he failed to participate in the protest hearing. The exhaustion of administrative remedies defense requires a person participate in a hearing before a government body or other lower tribunal before being able to challenge a decision in court. And there's a good reason for it. It's so that the agency isn't seeing the grounds for the challenge for the first time in a legal proceeding. They're required to bring it to the board's attention so they can determine whether they're right and whether they want to make an adjustment. So the legislature was somewhat sympathetic to the government entities in this case. They decided in response to that decision to try and give a remedy. The remedy is AB 2257. And that provides local agencies with an exhaustion of administrative remedy defense if new optional procedures are utilized and the plaintiff does not participate in the Prop 218 hearing by filing a written objection to the fee that specifies the grounds for noncompliance. So I want to introduce you to the fact we're talking about two different hearings now. There's a written objection hearing, and then later the protest hearing. As defined in the Plantier case, the administrative remedy to provide a defense must provide a clearly defined machinery for the submission, evaluation, and resolution of complaints by aggrieved parties. And the legislature actually quoted the Plantier case in its legislation so that everyone would know they were trying to provide a remedy for these kinds of situations. So I want to tell you now a little bit about what an objection hearing would be. Following procedures must be added to our existing Proposition 218 postcard notice procedure. The district must post the proposed rates on its website and make available to the public the written basis for the fee at least 45 days before the objection hearing. The district must post on its website the written basis for the fee and a link to the notice. We have to mail a written basis to the property owner upon request. The district must provide 45 days for a property owner to file an objection that specifies the grounds for noncompliance. Any deadline we impose must allow for a full 45 days to respond. The district must consider and respond in writing with a substantive response prior to the close of the protest hearing. Timely written objections and agency responses shall be presented to the district's governing body prior to or during the protest hearing. So this is sort of like a CEQA hearing where you identify a significant environmental effect and the agency has a chance to say, okay, our response to that is it's mitigated by mitigation measure number 6. And then it describes how it's mitigated. So something like that. Nobody's done one of these yet, so we're arguing by analogy that might be sufficient. The district must also include a written statement in the notice and written objections must be submitted within the objection period and that all procedural and substantive objections are included. In other words, putting them on notice. You got to give us all the grounds. Don't hold back, or you'll be barred. And then the district must complete these procedures before the conclusion of the protest hearing. So as you can see, we've got a 45 days for the objection hearing, and then another 45 days for the protest hearing. So it backs it up a little bit. Once the board is presented with all of those factors, your board then determines whether the written objections warrant a clarification to the fee, whether to reduce the fee, whether to further review the fee, whether to proceed with the protest hearing, and whether the district's responses will go to the weight of the evidence in a court review. So it very much limits what can be presented later against you. If the district complies with this law, any judicial action to challenge the fee shall be subject to the following. The court's review shall be limited to the records of the proceedings as follows. Here's the evidence that goes into what's known as the administrative record. And in any administrative writ of mandate proceeding, or all the things the government does in which we get challenged, the administrative record is what's produced for the court. There's no live witnesses, expert testimony. It all had to be done before the board. The board had to have heard it first. So one, any report or study justifying the engineer's report or fee, justifying the engineer's report, or the agenda staff report, any transcript or minutes of the proceedings of the board, any notices issued by the district, all timely submitted objections, all written evidence submitted prior to the protest hearing, documentation of the local agency's final decision, including the final ordinance or resolution imposing the fee for adopting it, all protests and tabulations, and all evidence supporting the fee in the files prior to completion of the protest hearing. And that's what goes into the record. Only very limited material may be submitted outside the record, and there are too few categories to really get into. So the board and board and staff would like your advice on whether to implement these procedures. There are pros and cons. The pros would involve, it may prevent a class action and that includes plaintiffs who did not participate in the hearing, and thereby limit damages. Obviously a very good result. It requires those objecting to articulate reasons and provides the district with an opportunity to correct. If we forgot to do something or got something wrong or there's a typo, it gives you a chance to fix the record. And lastly, obviously, it limits the evidence that may be used against us. But there are disadvantages too, or cons. And these are a little speculative, but let's talk about them. Another notice may encourage litigation. If you're a citizen and you get 2 notices about a hearing, you may think, hey, something's afoot here. Maybe I better look into this. Maybe I better challenge this. There's also obviously more burdens for the district. We have 2 hearings we have to hold, and there's a timing situation where you have to back up your hearings before you adopt a fee. You have to think all this through. You might have to think through, obviously you've already thought through adopting the fee and it took time to prepare that study, but procedurally you might have to think about 6 months out getting ready for the hearing. And lastly, the district normally only receives a handful of protests. And does this escalate the process? So those are our thoughts, and I know the board would like your advice on this, and we appreciate you participating, and I'm here to answer any questions.
On already? Hello, Jeff Arbor here. I just want to make sure I understand these new procedures are optional, right? And so the pros and cons are whether or not to engage in the optional procedures.
Yes, that's the optional procedure. We always have to comply with the protest hearing, and
Got
we
it.
would continue to do that. And this would be layered onto that.
And then just I have this experience often in my line of work, and I think it depends on the philosophy of the organization. If it's a good neighbor policy versus, quiet is better. And if it's a good neighbor policy type environment for the organization, I think more communication is always better. It does come with the risk that you outline, and I do experience that, but in the long run, I find it more beneficial. I would support moving forward with the optional process.
Rosemary?
I have a question. Does it have to be either or? So if there's just a base increase in rates, could you just take the minimum action? And then if there's a significant change in how these rates are created or applied, such as what happened in this particular case with the EDUs, could the district then implement this new procedure to prevent these types of actions being taken?
Yes, you can, you would, if you're going through one process already and you're working your way towards adopting one fee and you see something that gives you pause, you would have to restart the process to, because the objection hearing comes first. So you'd have to go back to the drawing board and start over again. If you later determine after that hearing that you had other issues, you could stop the process right there. Before the protest hearing, the board always has a right to do that. We all know that the deadline is August 10th to get it on the property tax roll. So we are always looking at that, and if you don't get your rate increased, you miss a year. And it's difficult to do. So I would say while you do have the right to do that, you have to think about how that would impact your budget, because you'd have to go back to the old rates and you'd lose the increases for that year. But you can always change course from year to year. You could adopt this procedure, you can do away with the procedure and go back to the procedure, as long as you just can't switch horses in midstream.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions? I have a comment, I guess. When it comes to procedure, and the way, the district wants to handle things, I kind of look at it as what's the most fair way to go about doing it where the district has the most protection. I tend to look at things in terms of what could create the larger catastrophic loss if the situation came up. And if there's a way to protect against a class action where people who aren't directly involved can't just jump on the bandwagon and get a check, I would kind of lean in that direction. I don't know that I would be that worried about sending an additional notice may encourage a bunch of people to start litigation who didn't have the plan to, only because people don't read anything the majority of the time. I'm always kind of for erring on the side of caution, which it seems for me, I think the pros outweigh the cons in this situation. Xerxes.
Yeah, Xerxes Callalung. My question to you, Alan, is are these proposed new rules that you're trying to implement, are they standard operating procedures for most sanitation districts in the US?
No, this is a California law, and this is brand new. So we don't have a track record yet of anybody utilizing this procedure.
But it's always like I kind of agree with Sue that you always err on the side of protecting the organization. With this is any time that there are procedural problems or issues that can be challenged, this would definitely protect the sanitary district from challenges that are from moving forward. And it's not always bad to be the first guy on the block to do things.
Sure.
This is Michael. Have any other special districts adopted? Nope. In California or for in Orange County? At all?
I'm not aware of any. We're into March. The law just went into effect January 1. So, I mean, I think everybody's just having this discussion right now. I don't think nobody could have been through the process yet. Whether they're thinking about it, I don't know.
Okay.
That would be a good thing to ask around about. I represent another sanitary district and they'll be getting a similar presentation, and I guarantee you they're not doing it. Yeah, but they may well.
And the optional procedures are there for as long as the law stands. There's no sunset on these new legal provisions anyway. So a special district can adopt these changes when it needs to, keeping in mind the factor of risk, and also if they're going to have a special assessment, they want to incorporate these changes, they need to incorporate it at the time where they meet those requirements before that August deadline to submit that change.
Yes.
Okay.
Alan, do we know what the financial loss would have been in dollars in the Plantier case had they found for Plantier the total amount that they were seeking? Like, do we know what that would have been?
No, I do not. I only know that they prevailed in the trial court. I don't know if they ended up, I mean, on the procedural matter, I don't even know if it went to trial. It must have gone to trial, I guess, but I do not know what the end result of that was, because this case, that was decided. You know, the court only reviews things that get to the appellate level. And sometimes you review an intermediate step, and that's what goes up on appeal. And you never, unless you go back and research what happened in the county, you don't find out what happened in the underlying case. But we could do that. We know recently in the Coachella Valley case, which was the latest Prop 218 case, it was like a $17 million. I mean, I don't want to scare you. This is a big agricultural district, and the farmers were getting a kind of a free ride, and the residents said, "Hey, we're subsidizing the farmers," and they filed that lawsuit. It was a proportionality case, and yeah, it was $17 million. That's a wow. But you know, we're talking about big landowners.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if there's even a way to calculate that or find out what it would be, you know, for our area or what it would have been in this case. But I think that kind of factors into it, though. I mean, if you're trying to prevent a class action lawsuit, you know, that can end up being millions of dollars, or, you know, a large amount of money. Or are we talking about, you know, 15,000? What does it take to implement versus what the potential loss is, I think is important to consider. Go ahead.
Ellen, what is the financial impact for implementing this new procedure?
Oh, gosh, that's hard to, it wouldn't be that much. You know, you'd have to do some procedures and send out some notices. Maybe somebody else can tell you about I know what the cost of the mailings are. You know, that's the only expense I can think of, because then, you know, you're holding the same public hearing. We know a public hearing doesn't take that much money. The mailing does, but it's not huge, but that's the biggest expense I can think of.
Michael?
Just for staff, in terms of timing, so here we're kind of looking potentially for a recommendation, whether to keep the existing procedures or to adopt the AB 2257 revisions. Is there something around timing where us and a recommendation of the board and adoption of changes needs to make that decision?
I don't believe this is time consuming or time sensitive. I don't think we need to adopt something right away. If you're not comfortable making a decision, if you want us to come back with some more information, we can do that. We're just, you know, we're hoping you can make a recommendation, either support or not support. But if you're not ready to that and want us to bring back some more information, we can do that. It's not time sensitive right now. Or correct me if I'm wrong, Alan. We don't have to adopt this in the next 6 months, right?
Are we going to have a Prop 218 adoption this year?
No, not this year.
Okay, good. I was glad to hear that. Yeah. We have a little time then.
But yeah, I think it should be revisited, but maybe not a my thought is not a recommendation right now, but if you are looking at changes, an assessment next year, it needs to be back into that, which means it needs to be considered the second half of this year.
Next year, yes, I believe next year we will have something for next
Okay.
year.
We'll
Oh,
have
you
the
want-
we'll have the benefit of other agencies and those that did try and comply with it this year.
Yeah, if it's not such a huge financial impact in proportion to the same category that this would belong in, I don't see a problem implementing this thing.
I just think that there's already a lot of regulation, requirements, timelines, deadlines that further constrain staff and the district. And if this is ultimately something that we may not need or will need only in certain circumstances, I don't know that it benefits us to say, let's just get more requirements and let's take them on optionally, especially if it's not regulatory driven. I just think it ties the hands and reduces flexibility of staff when moving forward with these rates. I do like the recommendation to wait and see what other districts are going and to really better identify what the needs are for the district. No need to jump in, is my thought.
Anyone else? So
What I'm
we need
hearing
to
is that
make a motion to do something here.
Or not, you don't do anything. So what I'm hearing, you don't want, you want your direct staff to come back with some more information.
Yeah.
I think it would be beneficial to, not forget about it, for sure, like, but if there's, more information in terms of what the potential loss was in the case or how something like that could affect us, because it said you couldn't choose to impose or not impose fees depending on the situation. But it would have to be done before any 218 hearing, which won't be until August of 2026, I imagine? Don't you guys usually do it?
We probably have to do, no, we used to try to do it before the budget's adopted, before the budget,
Okay.
so we get it.
It'll still be a year away.
Yeah, good.
But on that information, I'd like to know the financial impact against the district that was being sued. I just kind of want to know or potentially what kind of monies were being asked.
But that situation was so distinct by changing it to an EDU. It's not just about raising the rates. In that case, it seemed that they were changing how they were billing people. That's a very significant difference. So regardless of what, was it Ramona? I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Regardless of what Ramona paid, the thing is that this only applies in situations, not when we're raising the rates, but sort of like when we're changing how we're actually billing or coming up with these fees. And really, that's what a good lawyer is for, to say, hey, whoa, you're doing something significantly different. I recommend that we take this extra layer of protection. Because I would imagine that many times that when we're raising rates, we're just doing it the old fashioned standard, like, hey, the costs have gone up, we need to charge you more. So it's clear cut, we're doing what we've always done. But if we decide to do something radically different, that's where this comes into play. And I don't think it's needed each and every time. And also because this is so new, obviously there's no case law on it. The circumstances could vary from district to district. So honestly, I just think that, why run out and say we need to get more regulations that we need to comply with? Because it's just going to burden us. Those regulations are going to come regardless. My opinion is to just, because we have time, let's see what's going on.
I'll simply make the recommendation that we have staff bring the item back with any additional feedback based on some of the questions here to the CAC during the September 10th meeting, I think would be, unless anybody wants it earlier than that. Of course, if the board has a prerogative too to, you want it earlier?
No.
Oh.
And could I also add that the district does have a provision that's even more supportive of what we do and would possibly be another defense to this challenge in Plantier. And that is that we not only do our Prop 218 hearing, but every year we individually send out a notice to property owners and not, we do it with a published notice, but we say, if you want to challenge how your property's been assessed, this is the time to do it. And I think that happens in July or August, and every year we do that. So that was another opportunity to challenge it. So I don't know if the court would say, well, gee, you had 2 bites of the apple here. How can you complain?
So I have a question. We had a situation, I know it was a few years back, I think. It could have been a year, it could have been 5, I don't know. It all kind of runs together at this point. With somebody who was being charged a certain amount for ADUs that they had on their property. And then they said that they didn't have them anymore. And then they went back a bunch of years and said, we paid way too much. Like, would this be something that would that particular situation be something that would have anything to do with any of this?
I'm not really sure. This is a Prop 218 defense provided, but
Okay.
there could be some, depending on how they phrase their
Okay.
complaint, it could come into play. I'm not really exactly sure till I read the hypothetical complaint they were going to file.
Okay, fair enough.
I think, did you make a motion?
I mean, yeah, basically it was
So I'd like
the
to,
motion to come back
I was,
for an agenda item September 10th, and whether we hear that item or not, it's just a recommendation.
and I would like to second with the addition that we find out what the costs are to the district, what it would cost for the postcards and the town halls, and what it would do to staff.
Sure.
That's okay.
Accept those amendments, sure.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
With that, anybody opposed? Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, next item is to review sewer. Review sewer building permit and fixture fee preliminary study information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to have Mark Esker, our district engineer, introduce this item to the committee and also introduce our guest speaker. I do want to make one little change in the staff report. It does says recommendation, committee provide feedback. Yes, we want your feedback, but we also want direction from the board, I'm sorry, from this, from the committee. What option would you recommend to the board? There's 2 options to consider, and you'll hear this in your presentation. Option 1 or option 2. It'd be nice for us to get some direction from the committee on what to recommend to the board.
Okay.
So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark.
Thank you.
Good evening. How are you? Is everybody doing well tonight?
Yes, we're
Good,
fantastic.
good.
Happy to see you.
Likewise. Hey, thanks for allowing me to provide you with a review of our very preliminary information on our basically fixture and sewer fee study. These fees are not traditionally subject to the Prop 218 rates. So we're not planning to go through that process. However, we will be transparent, as you guys are very well aware, and how we just discussed. We're going to be transparent. We'll put the items on our website. We're going to send it to the Orange County Business Council, and we will work to get all the feedback from our community, including this committee. With that being said, I'm going to cover I'll say the overview and administrative issues, and then I'm going to turn it over to RDN, who's going to provide you with the down and dirty technical information and the costs associated with this program. I will say that unless you're planning to build a new house, add bedrooms, add a bathroom, add an ADU or 2 to your property, most homeowners will probably pay an additional permit fee of $40 plus a small increase to the cost for the inspection associated with, say, a sewer repair in your front yard. So it's not going to be a very large increase for those of you that need a repair in their front yard to your pipeline at one location. But RDN will go into all the fees and show you the chart and all the different costs that we're talking about. Permit fees here in our agency have not been increased for 7 years, and fixture fees have not been increased for 12 years. And as a result of that, our current fees are not covering the permit program costs. And so our desire is such that the folks applying for permits and going through inspections and and asking us to do plan reviews and make sure that they're meeting all of the sewer requirements, we want to cover those costs with the fees that are collected associated with the permit applications. The district's hired RDN consulting firm to perform the study and recommendation of the new fees. This is the firm that has also conducted our sewer rate study that did go through a Prop 218 hearing back in 2022. And I think we're in the third year of a 5-year rate. I believe that's the year that we're in. But since the team, the same team that performed that work for us is actually doing this work, but this time they're under the leadership of Anthony Alinsky, and he's the PM for the project. Let me mention that the firm has worked for over 40 years with public agencies doing rate fees, rate studies, fee studies, and over the last 3 years, they've worked for over 40 public agencies, 4 of which are here in Orange County: City of Santa Ana, City of Huntington Beach, South Coast Water District, and Moulton the Gale Water District. I do want to say that Anthony has 7 or 8 years of experience, and he's done many different rate hearings for different public agencies. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony to give you the real heavy-duty stuff. And then I may interject here and there, particularly when we start talking about some of the options, the 2 options as far as how we collect and what we collect for the fixture fees. Anthony, it's all up to you now.
All right, thank you so much. As Mark mentioned, I'm Anthony, and I want to thank the committee as well as staff, Scott and Mark. I'm setting up my presentation here. Are you able to see the presentation? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, we hear you.
Great. Again, you can see the presentation, correct?
Now we can see it.
Perfect. So we are looking at 2 fees today, 2 different types of fees, fixture fees and permit fees. And as Mark mentioned, these are not regulated by Proposition 218. So we've been working with staff for a couple months here, and we do have these preliminary results. This will generally be informative. There is a lot of information being presented though. So feel free to jump in at any time if there's a specific question, or if you want to wait to the end for the discussion, that works for me as well. But so the 2 types of fees that we're looking at, fixture fees and permit fees. Fixture fees are for the carrying capacity of the old customers, current customers that new customers buy into. And permit fees are the fees that customers pay when they need some specific task done by the district that only benefits that specific customer. As Mark mentioned, a permit, for example, or a review of a plan. So our primary objectives are to look at the current fees and the revenues collected by those fees and ensure if those are covering the costs. Also to identify any additional fees that can be charged for work that's happening by the district. And then finally to recommend fees that meet all the legal requirements. And the main ones that cover fixture fees are California Code 66013, 66018, 66016, and the Proposition 26. And Proposition 26 is just looking at ensuring that customers are not paying more than their fair share of those fees. So we're going to start because it's a little bit simpler with the permit fees. Basically, permit fees are recovering costs incurred by the district for specific permitting tasks, and they're designed to collect the actual costs. So there's not additional or overhead costs that are included on these besides if there's any supplies that the district needs to use at actual cost and labor at actual cost. And the ultimate goal of these are to ensure that customers do not pay more for their permitting activities through rates for customers who are getting these activities. So this is a balance between these customers that are not getting these specific tasks and ones that are. And the method that we use is to look at the total time and labor that's needed to complete these different tasks. And again, any kind of other supplies that are needed in general. So the current fees levied by the district include a list of sort of general activities. Permit, which is applied to all permits that are issued by the district, for example, tying into a lower lateral, an annexation, which is a large service that's provided. It doesn't happen very often. Looking at a swimming pool connection, for example, in each of these tasks, when they were calculated 7 years ago, it was determined that this was the actual fee that was needed to recover the costs at that time. Since then, labor costs have gone up, as well as other supply costs. And when we looked at the lists of tasks that the district is currently completing, we found that there is some more nuance that's not being captured in this list. And again, generally, this is not recovering the cost to actually provide these specific services. So we wanted to look at the actual hours that it took to complete each task. We wanted to look at the description of the task that's currently being used, and then make sure we update that to make sure that it includes all of the current things that are being done for those tasks. We wanted to look at labor rates and any overhead rates for that labor that's included, and that's benefits for employees, and as well as any other needed supplies or additional costs that the district incurs when it does these permitting processes. So looking at the updated list, you can see that it's slightly longer, or I guess more than slightly longer, about double the previous list. So we have a list of new items that we include, and if you see the blank cell in the current column, those are the fees that currently don't exist. Things like replacing an existing pipeline in the same trench, different than a different trench, 3 different types of laterals. If they needed small, medium, or large lateral, there's different levels of work that are involved in those, as well as installation of a new pump station, or additional inspections beyond the general sewer permit inspections. So the current shows the current, obviously, and the proposed is with the new and updated categories for labor that are used, as well as the calculated hours. For a general permit, as Mark mentioned, that difference is only $40 for the current year. In the current year, we would be adopting those in fiscal year 2026, so in July. Some of the fees we did find there were fairly significant differences. For example, large new development is approximately $726 different based on the amount of work that's involved in that compared to some of the other categories. Beyond that, we wanted to ensure that we weren't going to fall behind on the cost of these costs being recovered for these different permit fees. So we instituted a system where we would look at what the planned increases in labor rates were going to be over the next 5 years. That includes a COLA increase of 3% for employees, as well as a merit increase of 5%. And contract labor is based on California standards for those increases in contract labor of 4.4%. So if we see those fees increasing over the next 5 years, they're keeping up with the actual cost to provide this service. You can continue to do that under Proposition 26 as long as it doesn't exceed the COLA adjustment or the merit adjustment or the CPI that's being used to see what the costs are actually going to be for the future costs. I could stop there. Are there any questions specifically about permit fees? Because I'm going to move into the fixture fee section, which is the more technical section.
Anyone have any questions?
This is Jeff. I just have one question. Are there any of these permit processes that are more likely to, I guess, drag out or, kind of exceed your estimated labor hours and therefore cost than others?
So we added the additional fee called additional inspection. So generally speaking, when we were discussing with staff and looking at the timesheet data that was available, there were additional inspections that were needed for some of these different types of permitting activities, such as if a small new development, their plans are not correctly situated the first time. there's a certain amount of inspections that are included in each one of these costs. So when they exceed those in the description, then that additional inspection fee will be added to that.
Perfect. That's what I was curious. Thank you.
Rosemary.
I have a question, and it's on this slide. You're saying that the recommendation is that every year within this 5-year period, there's going to be increases for COLA, merit, and contract labor. Is that correct?
Correct. The intention of these fees are actually to collect the actual cost to perform the activity. So when that cost goes up because labor costs are going up due to COLA, merit, or contract labor, we want to capture those in these fees in the future years. If any of these numbers change, such as the COLA or the merit increase, then the proposed fees for the next year should include whatever that change is, not exceed or be lower than that.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me add that this forthcoming 2-year budget that's being prepared right now and that will be reviewed and adopted by our board of directors, that would be for fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27. And right now, the COLA, merit, and contract labor that you see on this slide is being used for that budget proposal that'll be coming forth to the board of directors. Scott, did you want to add anything to that? Okay.
I'm sorry, this is Jeff. Just
Oh, go ahead.
one more question. I apologize. This COLA, is that covering, you mentioned CPI earlier. Which one of those three covers CPI?
CPI was used for any additional costs that were incurred by the district. If there was any printing costs or other extraneous things that weren't related directly to labor. So that was evaluated at that 4.4%. The same with contract labor.
And now, is there an industry-specific CPI for these types of sewer services?
So we looked at the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Price Index, which is more a general CPI that covers the major market basket of goods.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more. So the permit fee, there is just, there is that one proposal. It's not like what we're getting to the next section with the fixture fees where there are two options. You've assessed what you need to cover your costs related to that. That's the option that covers that baseline cost.
Yes, that's exactly what we're saying. And in fact, in the committee report that you received earlier, I don't know if it was last Friday. That's why when you look at the two options, the top two rows are exactly the same because we're just capturing our fees as part of the program. It's the fixture fees that there's two methods of calculating it. There's a newer, more technical method that Anthony will be getting into shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please continue.
Moving on. All right, so fixture fees. Fixture fees are also called, I don't know if you've delved too deep into these, but potentially capacity fees or connection fees. And basically what a fixture fee is a one-time fee. It's paid by new customers that are trying to join the system, or in the case of individual fixtures, if you're adding any additional fixtures beyond what you currently have, they'll have an impact on that system as far as sewer flow is concerned. The ultimate goal is for equity between the current customers and future customers, because current customers are holding that capacity. They're paying for those pipes at the larger size to ensure that new customers can join the system. The method that we used, because no major development was needed, that was to buy into the new system rather than base these fees on additional needed capital costs. If you needed a brand new treatment plant to service a whole new service area, then you would want to look at some of those additional capital costs and capture those in the capacity fee as well, because you'd want future customers to also pay in for that so that current customers aren't totally buying the whole system. And so the district currently charges fixture fees based on a list of potential fixtures that any development can have. For the average fixture fee is about $34.50. That's based on 2 fixtures. And then each of the other fixture fees are some incremental version of that, depending on the number of base fixtures that would be. So for example, a toilet is based on 6 fixtures. 7 fixtures, I think, actually. And so the current fixture fees, again, were developed 12 years ago. They are not providing, in our estimation, enough revenue to cover the costs of that program, which is then using that capacity fee revenue to do additional capacity-related CIPs in the future, or replacing current CIPs that actually do function to help future customers. So the different methodologies, again, we looked at what the system of the value is. So that current value of the system is the basis for what we calculate the capacity fees or the fixture fees. We looked at the replacement cost of the current system, and that shows that current customers have paid X amount for that system. It has increased in value. So they've been covering that value in today's dollars. And then, but also that system value has been decreasing because of depreciation. It's been getting older. So we don't want new customers coming in and buying for a brand new system or paying into a brand new system. We want to make sure that we're aware of the fact that some of those assets are depreciated. Additionally, we want to remove the fixture fee revenues. Those are collected currently from fixture fees of the historical data that we have. So we don't want new fixture fee customers having to buy into fee related revenue that was already there. And presumably that's been used for capital costs already. When we look at the total system capacity, this is the divisor for this calculation. We wanted to look, since the system was totally built out, at the total capacity of the zoning. And that's based on the master planning documents that the district currently uses. And it's also the same calculation that was used in the rate study to determine individual capacities for customers. And then this is where we get into the 2 potential options. The current option, which is our option 2, which is based on your current methodology, which would be just taking one base unit and then multiplying that relative to each other to determine all of the total units that would be needed for each fixture. We do not believe that this collects enough revenue and does not actually calculate the actual impact of specific fixtures on the system. We believe that fixtures in the system are actually having a higher impact. And so option 1 tries to mitigate that lack of preciseness of the current methodology by looking at the Uniform Plumbing Code as well as the California Green Building Standards to estimate the average use for those different types of fixtures in addition to the amount of water that can potentially flow through them. So I'm going to go through each of these sort of individual portions of the fixture fee and show the calculation. So the total replacement cost less depreciation, that would be the total cost of all the assets in today's dollars minus all of the depreciation that's happened since the item first went in the ground, all the CIP, is $78,629,000. Less, we want to look at the fixture fee revenues that have been collected in the current stage, and that's about $500,000. So the current basis for the fixture fees for 1 per fixture would be $78,116,000. And this data was derived from asset lists as well as the previous fixture fee revenue that was collected that was provided by the finance department. The total system capacity, again, we use the district's master plan. The total system capacity is estimated to be about 26 million gallons per day. And this is based on the total land use, the zoned area in the land, as well as the gallons per day per acre for each of those zoning categories. And you can see commercial, for example, can potentially have a much higher gallons per day per acre. And then as well as any inflow that comes from rain. So we project the system to be able to hold approximately 26,124 gallons per day based on the master planning document. Slide. Oh, so this is the calculation. So the calculation is that total system value divided by the total capacity of the system to get the cost per gallon. And that's applied to the different fixtures based on what we estimate to be their total daily flow in gallons. So the cost per gallon of that calculation is $2.99 per gallon. And that's the basis for both of the options that are being presented today. So fixture fee option 1, and we believe that this again is accounts for some of the difference in utilization, as well as the probability of use, as well as the gallons per day that could be potentially flowed through each one of these fixtures. This is the basis, so you would multiply that 299 times the gallons per day per fixture to derive the total fixture fee for that category. So for example, a drinking fountain has an estimated use total flow of 0.5 gallon per minute. We would multiply that by the probability of use, which the use of a drinking fountain we're estimating to be about 2% per day. And so we would multiply those to get to the gallon per day fixture amount. And there's the calculation of the number of minutes in a day, et cetera. But this is the sort of the baseline calculation of that versus option 2. And option 2 is the one that is currently being used by the district. And the option 2 just looks at the number of total fixtures in a standard residential unit. And then multiply those by that unit value that's currently being used. So a bathtub currently is worth the value of 2 fixtures under the fixture fee. There's an average of 1 bathtub per house. So we calculate the total fixtures in a household of 23 based on that, each of the single individual sewer producing fixtures. This data came from the master planning data. And this is just would be an average for all different types of residential units. The flow per residential unit is estimated at 170 gallons per day. So dividing the number of estimated fixtures per fixture unit, where per residential unit comes to 7.4 gallons per day per fixture. So that's would be multiplied against the 2.99 times the unit value of that fixture. So fixture option 1 has some significant impacts. And again, it realigns these costs to be based on what we believe to be the actual impact of each of these different types of fixtures onto the sewer system in relative terms. So the bathtub current fee is $34.50, which is 2 fixtures. That instead would be $236.82, a difference of $202, because based on the actual use of that item and the gallons per minute flow calculation based on the plumbing code, we're seeing a much higher impact on the system in that case. There are some which are currently higher fixture fees, which would go down under this methodology. And that also takes into account what we believe the actual system of that would, the actual impact on the system with that would be. Again, there are some significant impacts. So when a laundry washer would currently be $51.75 under the current fee, would become about $828.88 under the proposed option 1 fee. So an impact of around $777. For option 2, since we're just recalculating the base value and not recalculating the equivalent fixtures, it's a standard increase across the board. So this has less impact individually on any one fixture or any type of new fixture that's being in the system. However, we don't believe that it captures the actual impact of any one of these fixtures. In this case, the average increase would be approximately $15. Similarly to, so this compares the two. The two options, option 1 and option 2, you can see that there's significant differences in some cases. In some cases, the fixture fees would be lower under option 1, but generally speaking, that would increase the overall fixture fee revenues pretty significantly because that would have that they actually have a higher impact on the system than is currently being provided for under the current fee structure. We were asked to review some of the local agencies. And there are a lot of different methodologies that are used. I mentioned capacity fees, which takes into account basically all of the fixtures at once. In this case, option 1 was in the report for the city of Brea for their most recent fixture fee report. Option 2 is currently being used by the city of Cypress, city of Irvine, city of La Habra, and your current fees. And then some agencies and cities use a flat, which they charge exactly the same for every fixture that's joining or being removed from the system. And so that would be Buena Park, City of Cypress, Orange, Los Alamitos, La Placentia. And then finally, similarly to the permit fees, we also want to ensure that we continue to collect the correct amount of fees as construction costs increase. So we wanted to apply the construction cost index. The 10-year average of that right now is 4.8%, and that's based on the Engineering News Record annual publication. You can see from this figure that construction costs have increased pretty significantly over the last few years, which is one of the reasons that we wanted to review this study at this time, because we were not collecting the correct amount for the value of the system. So we did, again, a 5-year projection of what those construction costs would look like under each option. We did want to phase in option 1 so that it wasn't as huge of an impact in the first year. So by the year 2030, fiscal year 2030, those fees will be at that full value based on that projection of the construction cost index increases. And then for fixture fee option 2, we would implement the proposed rates in the first year and just increase those by that 4.4% in this case, depending. And we estimate that to be a good representation of future fixture fee revenue increase needs, that construction cost index. So I guess any other questions fixture fee related?
Go, Michael.
Me? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just, when I was going back and, this is me speaking out loud, when I was going back and forth between the fixture fee options 1 and 2 and the staff report on option 1 and 2, it's not the same. It's not relative, right? Yeah, that's why I was like going back and forth. Oh, wait a minute, that's not the right one.
Yeah, let me explain. I made an error on I just realized it when we were going through this. Under the financial review section, you will see that I put under option 1 that the fixture fee increase in revenue would go from 64,000 to 131,000, and then I mistakenly said that for option 2, the revenue for the fixture fees would go from 64,000 to 550,000. Those two numbers are transposed. 550,000 should be under option 1, and the 131 should be under option 2. So I made the mistake when I put the chart together, but the write-up is correct, and the presentation you saw was correct. So just to refer back, option 1 would be a new way of calculating the impact of new fixtures on our system, and it will generally increase greatly the amount of money raised to pay for that capacity. Option 2 will keep our basically fixture fees the same type of fees and how we calculate the fees today, which doesn't use probability and statistics to estimate the different flows from the different fixtures. Option one is much more accurate, and we think it's the appropriate method to calculate the impact to the system capacity. However, we see it's a big increase, and so that's one of the things that we're going to have to understand from you, our board, and others, that how do we want to get there? And do we do it in 5 years? Do we do it in 10 years? I mean, those are some of the things we're kicking around right now.
Just to reiterate, so on the screen here, so what Mark said on their fixture fees, just
That number right there, 131, should be where the 500, and where 500 is should be moved to the 131. Those are the two numbers that were turned around.
What I'm thinking about, yeah, because it is a major difference. Right now, in order to cover your costs would be $338,000 and, or is that 383?
Yeah,
It's right there, 338. sorry.
Yeah, 338.
Escalating year after year.
Yeah. And that method, I'm sorry, option two would be 338, and option two, like you said, will escalate, but it's not as accurate as option one is, which would be the $757,000 a year income from the program.
But at some point, I mean, your costs, I mean, it's right now, I don't know what that will, how close, when will 338 get close to 757? And then you have to reassess. I guess first and foremost, the concern, which is why this is here, is how many years have lapsed. And that's why now, trying to make up that difference and then also plan for in the future as well. The other thing that I'm thinking about too is, we'll see, is in Costa Mesa, we're going to have a lot more development, a lot of it being multifamily development, some approved and moving forward in the SoCo area. Other places many years from now, it may be past your horizon, definitely past the 5-year horizon, within that 10-year horizon. So those are added costs, but first and foremost, fiduciary responsibility, ensuring that you cover your costs. That's the most important thing. And then second will be the difference. Is that going to in any way impact, the total square footage cost for those units moving forward? But that's many years from now too. So that's just what's going in my head right now.
And City of Brea, as you showed on the previous chart, I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 slides previous, City of Brea has moved to option one. So they've made the move and they're charging a lot more for so City of Brea has moved there. Option two, Cypress, us, Irvine, and La Habra, we're currently all doing option two right now. And we can certainly continue that for the next 5 years. That is one way of moving forward. Again, I just realized, and RDN brought to my attention, that we might not be collecting enough to pay for capacity for people bringing in larger homes, additional homes, ADUs, and other things.
So just the last question then, where is that, if you're a shortfall right now, what you're collecting versus what the costs are, where are you shifting?
For them.
You're subsidizing that.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. You're subsidizing that. But in terms of procedures, you're moving something from one fund to the other to cover those costs, or, okay.
Well, again, that's a yes and no proposition, and it's not as straightforward as you might believe. I know we want to get out of here at 7:30, so I'll try to keep this as simple and brief. But what I want to say is, because capacity is, we know capacity in a specific sewer, and the pipelines have a certain amount of capacity, let's say, and we look at them as, well, half full pipe is got capacity. So if it's 5.1, if it's little over halfway, say 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, or 0.5, which is half, or 0.5, 1, 2, and 3, or 4, whatever the number is, at what point do you have to trigger building a bigger sewer? There's only about 2 or 3, per our master plan, there's only about 2 or 3 sewers right now that are at or just below where a trigger point where we would have to build a larger sewer. So we do have some spare capacity in our system, and I think we have time to consider this item carefully before making a recommendation to the Board of Directors.
Well, time meaning, well, yes and no, there is time, but we would like the board to adopt these fees for the new fiscal year budget. So, and so we're presenting the budget to you, the CAC, in May. So it'd be nice to get some direction.
Rosemary, I think her hand went up first and then Jeff.
So there's a couple of things. One, with this presentation, the information, it's very comprehensive, but I think it can be worked on to be more digestible. So I'm looking like there's one column that these are existing fees and these are what, if we're going method 1, option 1 or option 2, this is what the new fee might be. So I'm not seeing deltas or percent differences that would help me better see what this is looking like. Also, I think, and I'm still kind of confused, but what I think I've heard is that we're not collecting enough fees to pay for this capacity buy-in. And to me, that's very worrisome or problematic. Huh? Disturbing, right, because it is shifting the cost from a developer to, say, I don't know, me and you, who have been paying into the system. So I would definitely like to see that, that we move to like a full cost recovery. I do like seeing that there are built-in increases for this 5-year plan. And then my question for you, Scott, is after this 5-year step up, are you planning to do another study to look at fixture and permit fees?
I think that's a good standard, right? Do it every 5 years so we don't get behind. So yes, the answer is yes, we would do it in another 5 years.
Yeah, we do our master plan every 5 years. We do our rates every 5 years, unless something special pops up. But it makes sense to do this at every 5 years. And when you do the sewer rate study, because they look at volume of flow, strength of flow, and then solids within the flow, that information feeds into the fixture fees and the capacity analysis used to developing the fixture fee. So it makes sense to do it every 5 years.
Anybody else have any questions? Jeff?
I think I've heard or read, it's applicable only to new customers, right?
Yeah, the existing customers that are not adding rooms, are not subdividing their properties, are not adding ADUs as an example, they're not going to pay any of this. Let's say you decide you are going to build an ADU. You would come in with your plans, we would look at it. OCSD would charge you for their square footages or whatever it is, number of bedrooms. We would charge you by the fixture and then the plan check and inspection fees and then the cost of the permit.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't only big projects, like
Anybody.
development. And the reason why I mentioned it is other utilities like SoCalGas or Edison and the others, they charge interconnection fees, right, for the cost of upgrade as a result of that project. So I didn't know if it could apply that way, but with so many little projects, that may not apply.
Yeah, and that's also why we came up with many more units, because what we were finding as an example is building an on-site sewer lateral to serve that particular property, very large houses with very deep backyards, because we have some properties here in Costa Mesa where they're 300, 350 feet deep. We were finding we were spending a lot more time, yet charging the same for those very big, large houses as people have very small houses. So that's why we ended up with more categories this year, because we want to charge appropriately for the appropriate inspection.
Thank you.
President Schaefer, did you talk?
Yeah, Anthony, thank you. That was not as confusing as you thought it was.
Confuse me.
Yeah, that's scary. So my question or my thought is, as we project out over the 5 years and then the 5 years after that, this first 5 years from when we institute whatever we decide to do until the end of the 5 years, there's a factor involved. We use for COLA and construction cost index, the general LA, Long Beach, Orange County area as we project out, right? The wildfires are going to have a huge effect on construction cost index. A huge effect. And since we're lumped into that area, has that been considered in what we're projecting out, or do we need to take a look at what the best guess scenario is for what those costs are going to be based on the wildfires? And those costs are going to be rather large, let's put it that way.
The engineering news record or construction cost index is what Anthony was referring to. They do look at all of those pieces of information. I haven't seen the blip yet based on the impacts of potentially of the fire. But let's say that will probably be lumber and residential type increases. It may not be, yeah, and labor. And then, so we'll have to see how that plays in. I don't know that I'm suspecting that ENR or the construction cost index will be taking that into consideration.
I think we need to make sure that.
Yeah, we can only go by what they've published, though. I can't make up a number, Scott. Yeah.
And the projection used a historical average, so when the actual data is published, that data can be used.
Now, if we do see something unusual or way out of bounds, we could always do another study.
And it may not just be wildfires, it could be other climate-related events, like massive, like rainstorms that could cause a lot of I&I infiltration.
And then there was a subtle point that Anthony made that I just want to make is real clear. If we implement option 2, we will implement that in full in year 1, and then every subsequent year, 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be increased by COLA and those other factors. If we implement option 1, we will phase that option in over the 5-year period to get us caught up to the new way of calculating the likelihood of impacts on our system.
I mean, I definitely think that people need to pay their way.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate being the one to always say, yeah, charge people more, but it's not fair to charge people who aren't even causing the problem for the cost of whatever, the issue is. And I know that there's that big building going in north of the 405 that's supposed to have 11,000 units or something in it. Yeah.
SoCo.
And I mean, I don't know, is our system already able to absorb the capacity of that? And
Yeah, we've issued a will serve for that, and fortunately for us, they are going to build us a new sewer associated with that future development when it comes along. But it's a very short outfall to Orange County Sanitation District. So from that perspective, it's not as big an impact as you might think.
oh, okay, because
Okay.
of the distance.
Yes.
But even still, like the price per square foot of a building is like not impacted by the sewer fees. They should pay. I mean, it's about the nuts and bolts and the wood and all that other stuff. Like the developers should pay what they're going to impact us for. It's just not, I think it's completely reasonable to go with option 1. I like it. Want to make that motion? Motion to go with option 1.
I'll second it. I think that you have to recoup the cost of what it's actually costing. I mean,
Okay.
it all makes sense to me anyway. I mean, so
Motion, a
for a
second?
second, All those in favor?
Well, just
Further
wanted,
discussion,
Just-
substitute motions, throw them out.
there's just one comment you had mentioned, Mark, about talking to, you said OCBC? The Orange
Yeah,
County-
Orange County Business Council, I believe it is.
It's,
And-
the business industry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Business
No,
That's it.
absolutely.
Anyway,
I
I,
wanted to be sure also that in that discussion, any discussions about what is proposed or what is adopted, that you also include the Costa Mesa.
okay, we can,
The businesses that are.
we can certainly do that. And as you're likely guessing, the Plumbing Association, the Business Association, the Chamber of Commerce, I suspect they're not going to be happy with the larger increase. Because they tend to do more of the development in our area.
Just for the sake of
Yeah.
for a smaller community and everybody works together, like with those communities on meetings, which they participate in, just ensuring that they get the information.
Sure, and we'll do that. We'll do that, and we will take their input, and we provide all feedback and input to the board of directors so when they make their decision.
Thanks.
And I mean, I lived in Brea for 23 years and I still go there quite a bit and they have a lot more open space than we do. I don't know if that should be a consideration or not. But I just think at the end of the day that people need to pay for whatever it is they're using. I mean, it seems like a basic principle for Joe customer that's paying. For businesses and chambers and those kind of things. I know they, like you said, they look at things completely differently. They just want to get people in there and whoever else has to pay for it, suck it up.
Well, call
Yeah.
for the question, the vote.
Okay, so we have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention?
Did that, Gina, want to say? Okay.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right, let's move into the closing items. Do we have any committee member comments? Any? I have a couple. The first one is a reminder that everybody needs to attend a board of directors meeting or a study session. And generally, as a rule, the total group has not been good at doing that. The beauty of, I know we have conflicting schedules and things, some things happen in the morning, some things happen in the afternoon, but we can look out at the calendar of meetings. The board meeting generally falls on the last Monday of the month, usually with the exception of holidays. Maybe as we go forward, people can look at their schedule and we can have people say, I'll go to this meeting. So they get it on their radar well ahead of time. So we don't end up at the end of the year and nobody's gone to any of the meetings. I also think it would be helpful moving forward. I know the board has 6 applications for the CAC. Thank you to those of you who have served and who have reapplied. I hope you are reappointed because your input has been very valuable. Going forward, maybe we include the handbook and the expectations of the CAC with the total CAC packet, the application packet. So when people are signing up or applying to be on the CAC, they already know what is expected to them prior to applying, as opposed to finding out on the back end. And then we have problems with people showing up or not going to meetings or things like that. I think that might be helpful. I would like to say thank you to you and to the rest of the staff and to the 2 members of the board that are here. I'm the sole survivor from the original CAC when it was first organized and started in 2018. And I have very much enjoyed my time here. I'm hoping it will continue, but in the event it does not, I just want to say thank you to all of you. I respect and appreciate all of your hard work. I'm not the easiest person at times. I bring up topics some people don't want to talk about. And I'm a little bit harsh and I understand that, but it comes from a good place. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. I wish you well no matter what happens. Anybody else? Okay,
Good, thank you.
Staff comments?
President Schaefer,
We get Staff comments?
staff.
Yes,
Okay,
staff here.
Staff
Yes,
first.
Yes.
Staff first,
So,
then board
So
staff.
yes, I want to say something.
Board staff.
But I'll kind of piggyback on what Chair Lester just mentioned about serving on the CAC. There are 6 members where their term has expiring tonight, and we want to thank those 6 members for their service. We have a nice certificate for you, and there are 3 of those 6 are submitted applications to the board, and we want to thank you for your continued services. The board will be considering at the March 24th meeting to appointment of the 6 vacant positions. But first, I do want to recognize those committee members whose term does expire tonight, and that is our chair, Sue Lester.
Thank you.
And then the other thing with Dean Fisher, and then also are expired, so we'll be sure they receive their certificates. So again, thank you very much for all of you for your service. Your input is greatly appreciated by staff and by the board. I know they greatly appreciate your input. You do this on your free time, and we thank you so much.
We thank you.
And staff, board, we're all good?
Any upcoming events or anything to announce?
Gina, do you know?
Not when you need to know.
There's Earth Day, but that's
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
April.
So go ahead, Gina.
We can send out an email. We have quite a few coming up in April for Earth Day, so we can share all of those with you.
Also, it's not related to us, but Mesa Water District, they're having an education center grand opening ceremony on March 28th, which is a Friday. So I think you can go on their website, you can find some more information. They've got this brand new education center to educate students and the public about water. So that's. It's off-site. It's not. Yeah, it's off-site. Yes, it's not off at HQ. And I think there's a special parking area you have to park, and they're going to bus you in. So yeah,
I believe the next meeting is May 14th,
that'll be.
question mark,
We'll be-
exclamation point.
Yeah, it's in May, and we'll be presenting the proposed biennial budget to the committee.
Okay, and, thanks, everybody. I guess
Great,
we'll
thank
adjourn the
you.
meeting. Thank you.